Thank you for joining me on another episode of She Leads Now podcast, where we help career and entrepreneurial women gain the tools to develop a success mindset, create winning strategies, build collaborative relationships, and take bold action towards creating impact and fulfillment in their lives and careers. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I'm on a mission to awaken and activate women and emerging leaders so they can tap into their innate leadership ability, elevate their influence, and create the impact they were destined to make. If you're ready to up-level your confidence, courage, and influence, you've come to the right place. Join me weekly for insights, strategies, and resources to help you grow, develop, and embody the leader you are meant to be, so that you can make the impact you know you are called to make and establish the legacy you've always dreamed. The world eagerly awaits the emergence of your brilliance, impact, and influence. So with that, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey there, it's Sabine Gideon, host of She Leads Now, a show created to help women entrepreneurs and professionals increase their leadership effectiveness, advance their organization's mission, and help others reach their highest potential. There's a great need throughout all levels of society for accountable, integrous, and transformative leaders. Leaders like you and me, who are ready to step up to the plate and expand our influence and impact. Subscribe to She Leads Now on Apple Podcasts and tune in every Wednesday for insight and practical tools to help you in your mission to leaving a lasting legacy. Welcome to another episode of She Leads Now. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I am thrilled to be back with you here another week. This week, I have the amazing Meaghan Wagner here with me, joining to chat about the work that she does, her journey, leadership, how that shows up. And so before we get into the conversation with Meaghan, just want to give you a little bit of background about her. So Meaghan Wagner, the Goal Guru, gets amazing leaders and talented teams off the everything is important hamster wheel to deliver results without the burnout. Yes, we all need that. Over the last decade, she's brought vision, strategy, and joy to teams and organizations throughout New York City. She's on a mission to teach employees and employers alike the keys to true work-life balance through her coaching and her workshops. With that, welcome to the show, Meaghan.
Hi, Sabine. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we finally get to do this.
Absolutely. Look, the build-up, it's going to be worth it. So we connected through LinkedIn, through a different platform. So my audience listening, it should be no surprise. And you have had a very, very interesting career journey and background. And so I'd love for you to share with the audience what that journey has been leading up to what you do today.
Absolutely. So I should start off with the caveat that my career journey is constantly evolving, and that's actually part of what I specialize in, is just constantly being on my toes as my career evolves and grows. So my career started way back in the day in book publishing. I actually was an editor at Penguin Random House for a few years. And that job really was the center of my life for years. I really wanted to be this big book editor. That I moved to New York. I went to grad school. It was the dream. I literally have a picture somewhere in my house, me like in second grade, like I'm going to be a book editor. I don't know what second grader dreams of being a book editor, except for someone with like imposter syndrome that they could never be an author, which is its own psyche. But it was a dream from a really young age. And lo and behold, I get into my mid-20s and realize that this career pays nothing and is stagnating fast, because I'm a very, very good admin. I'm a very, very good systems trainer, and everyone wants to be a book editor. So they were just throwing tons and tons of admin work at me. And they were like, do you mind not editing books and just doing admin forever and ever at $40,000 a year? And after about a year of real soul searching, I was like, is this how I want to spend my 30s? And I made what would be the first of many career changes and moved over to marketing within book publishing. And I'm going to fast forward you here and not take you through all 10 years of my career one by one. But I moved into book marketing, and that was online. I got really fluent in the way digital marketing worked around 2000, probably 14. It's constantly changing, but I got really familiar with the landscape then. And that enabled me to jump into yet another career, which was digital marketing for TV. So I worked at HBO for 5 years, and I worked in digital production for their marketing team there. I worked on some Game of Thrones. I worked on Big Little Lies. I mostly worked on HBO.com, making sure that all of our teams could publish their content quickly and easily. And that gave me a tech background and a leadership background and all of these whole new doors opening up because I let go of the it must be books mindset. And I got a little I got a little attached to the adventure of kind of jumping in with 2 feet into new ventures. So after about 5 years working at HBO and learning to mentor and be mentored by absolutely fantastic people, I left HBO in January of 2021 to start my own coaching practice. And I'm very goal centric, as you have noted. One of my signature systems for work at HBO, for work at in publishing, for my own work, became 90-day planning. And so I really specialized and focused my coaching around that, around teaching people the power of being able to look at these midterm goals, these things that aren't a year or 5 years and aren't this week and next week, but really how you can look at significant progress over about 3 months and developing systems all around that. And over the last 2 years, I've been building that on my own and I've been doing some consulting work. So now I'm actually right on the verge of going in full time to take this really great system in-house at a company called Woliba. And it's a tech startup that's in the corporate wellness space. So I'm going to be able to work with more teams and help them set their goals for health and wellness for their teams. So yeah, I've been kind of all over the place and constantly, as I said, constantly evolving and just kind of finding myself one step at a time along the leadership path.
Absolutely. I love your journey first and foremost. And I love your courage and curiosity in stepping into new roles with not necessarily the fear of like, oh my gosh, can I do it? But more so of like, hey, I'm gonna learn. So hey, let's see what happens. And I think that that's so huge having that and having that type of mindset to be able to move forward. And clearly it's led you into really great opportunities that allow you to exercise your zone of genius and certainly expand your expertise. So thank you for sharing with us your journey. So it sounds like in this at this stage you'll be working with organizations, right? You'll be working with leaders and organizations. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do in terms of supporting leaders as they're shifting in their careers or after as they're moving up the ladder.
Yeah. So I have a couple of different mandates, both in my work at Woliba and in maintaining my coaching practice, which is going to be complementing my work at Woliba. My coaching practice, I work with leaders often, most often right now, I work with leaders who are a little stuck or stagnant. They're not sure what their next steps are. They're not sure if there's growth at their organization. They're not sure if there's growth at their organization if they want it. And they're not really clear on what they're pursuing in their career right now. And we're taking a lot of steps back to look at what is really fulfilling and what is really success personally for them and defined by them internally so they have a mission to take forward into the world that isn't just get to the C-suite as fast as you can and like grab a corner office because that's what it means to win, really defining goals internally and striving from something that actually aligns with your own values and your own needs and what you want your life to look like because success is different for literally every person on earth. So that's how my coaching practice is working. With my clients at Woliba, I'm actually doing a lot of hands-on work in helping companies and HR teams within them establish wellness programs. A lot of them haven't had any kind of wellness or balance or mental health support for any of their employees actually ever. And so it's a very overwhelming prospect and it's a very big step for a lot of these companies. And I'm really there to support how they can bring those services to their companies in a way that feels authentic to them.
Absolutely. So just curious because there's new research that's coming out that a lot of individuals who were on that C-suite track, specifically women, are just deciding like, yeah, no, you can keep it.
Yeah.
I don't want it. Right? Are
Mhm.
you as you're working with your clients, are you noticing as you're helping them, design their ideal life or design their ideal career, are you noticing that more and more of them are moving away from the desire to climb the corporate ladder and kind of what is the real underlying trigger, the real underlying tone around why they're making that shift?
So the answer is yes and no. I'm really seeing kind of a combination. The biggest thing I'm seeing, and I have this with one client in particular, is a detachment of ego from their career goals. A lot of times the pursuit of title, the pursuit of climbing the corporate ladder isn't really, they don't really know why they're doing it. It's just to achieve and just to say they achieved and get the gold star. And there's a lot of ego wrapped up in that. I think I know another coach who calls it the honor roll hangover. And it's when you've just always been on the honor roll and you're constantly trying to be on the honor roll on the day that you realize that, like, oh, it doesn't actually exist. And even when it did, it wasn't a real thing. And just constantly trying to get accolades because that's the only real model you've had for being fulfilled so far. So there's a lot of detaching from that in my clients. And I don't think it's necessarily getting off the C-suite track so much as redefining what the track is for themselves, whether it's to be a CEO or to be in the C-suite of some kind, to be in the driver's seat no matter what your role is really the big thing that I'm seeing develop with a lot of my clients. Is they're just sick of feeling like they're following the breadcrumb trail somewhere else that someone else has laid out. They want to define the vision of their own careers themselves.
Yeah. As you were talking about the earlier part there, I definitely, that was me. I remember when I first started in HR in corporate America, and there was this particular role that I wanted, which was the HR business partner role. And I remember my manager, one of the managers on the team, was just like, "Yeah, you're going to need about 20 years of experience. So how about you pipe down?" And I took that as a challenge. I was just like,
Mhm.
"Oh, for real? Yeah, no, I'm not spending 20 years." And so that's when I went into this mode of like, I'm going to take on all the opportunities and I'm going to take these
Mhm.
career risks and I'm going to do these projects and I'm going to be on this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And it took me a very long time. Actually, it took 10 years for me to finally get to that HR business partner role. So I sort of kind of, beat him to his thing. But at the same time, once I got to that role, it was just like, oh, I don't want this. Like, this is not
Yeah.
what I want. Part of it was I had outgrown, that version of myself, of my 22
Mhm.
and 23-year-old self. And then also that underlying desire to prove this man who probably forgot that he said that to me and that he triggered me in that way. And here I was doing all of this stuff to prove someone wrong who probably didn't even
Didn't
remember.
even think about it.
Right, exactly. And so I love how you stated that, a lot of people are coming to the place where they're detaching from ego, because that is true. A lot of us are following a model or following, what our parents told us or what teachers told us that the path that we need to go on. And obviously, I know people are tired of talking about the pandemic, but let's be real. Had the pandemic not happened, I think people would have still gotten to that place, but perhaps not as quickly, right? It was almost like a global shutdown that allowed everyone at the same time to reassess life. And also I love the statements you made around that like model of fulfillment, right?
Mhm.
What does fulfillment look like for you? And similar to you, I'm of the mindset that leadership really starts with that self-awareness. Who are you? What are your values?
Mhm.
What do you believe in? What do you want? What do you desire? Getting clear on that and then building out the steps and strategies that align to that. So creating a model of fulfillment that is feels good to you, that is aligned with who you are, is certainly helpful to anyone, whether you're trying to climb the corporate ladder or, you've started your own business or whatever profession you're in.
Absolutely. It's absolutely pivotal to avoiding what I think is called the arrival fallacy, right? Is that, if you combine the honor roll hangover with the arrival fallacy, it's like once I get here, I'll be happy versus this is the direction I'm going in because as far as I can tell, it aligns with my values and what I want. And that requires being honest about what you want and not telling yourself you want something that everyone else wants you to want. It really requires being honest with yourself every step of the way. And that way you're coming from a place that isn't dictated by other people and it isn't dictated by assumptions, but it's a lot of work to maintain that level of self-awareness. You don't stay the same as you were. As you said, you're not going to be the same person you were when you were 22 and you're not going to be the same person you were 6 months ago. And really allowing your goals and your dreams and your vision for your future to evolve as your tastes and passions grow isn't something people are really taught how to do.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, you know, just thinking about your personal experience here, so often many of us, and I've been in that space too, it's kind of like you get into a zone, right? You get into a place where like you're comfortable, you have a routine, like financially you're in a certain place, you know, the work that you do. And oftentimes it's very hard to break out of that routine to step into something that you know, may be a little bit more uncomfortable or may challenge you or that may cause you to have to like let go of some things that are familiar and comfortable to you. So talk to me, and we were talking about this a little bit in the green room here around, you know, how do you help people grow or intentionally
Mm.
start the growth cycle within themselves and within their careers?
Excellent question. So, one thing is for me, I love and thrive on change. I love to set up my routines and get them completely perfect and then blow them out of the water. That's just a little bit of a natural inclination for me. And I didn't really realize it until the first time I blew my whole career up that kind of change is really invigorating and a really great puzzle for me. But one of the things I've really been working on with my clients recently, and I've been just really contemplating how to build up a real body of work around this, but has been really including how we want to engage with challenge and discomfort in the pursuit of our goals. We tend to think, I'm sure you're very familiar with vision setting exercises and ideal days and the way we want things to be. And as I was mentioning earlier, it's very sunshine and roses. It's a very rose-colored glasses approach to the world. It's what if everything could be perfect? And I think it really disregards the need we have as people to overcome things, to overcome challenges and to grow from discomfort. We constantly get wrapped up in trying to like build the happiness version of our lives. And in trying to make things perfect, we're not only constantly failing, but we're actually building a dissatisfying version of our own lives where there's no growth and there's no challenge and there's no, we love stories of good and evil for a reason. I'm a big nerdy fantasy buff. And then part of that's because I love the stories of people overcoming something difficult and really striving. And yet in our work and in our lives, a lot of times we decry those things that are uncomfortable that we have to overcome until we're past them and we look back and we're like, oh man, that was great. I really got through that. And oh man, I'm amazing. And we don't but we don't make any intentionality around trying to overcome those blockers. And so one of the things I've really been asking my clients and really asking myself is what are the challenges I want to overcome this year? What are the discomforts I want to face? For me personally this year, it's actually been having really uncomfortable conversations. I love to make people happy. I love to make people content. I love to bring equilibrium and calm to things. I'm very good at it. But really asking hard questions of people and letting them sit in the discomfort of the question that I've asked instead of trying to solve the problem for them to make everyone happy has been really my growth edge this year.
Ooh, I love that. And what triggered or what brought you to that place where you're kind of like, you know what, challenge myself this year. And this is the area that I'm going to challenge myself.
I mean, for me, it wasn't. I would love to tell you that my creative and my coaching process is very, very organized and I do it step by step but sometimes it's just part of the creative process. I think I was on a run and I was listening to just I don't listen to music with lyrics when I run. So it gives me a lot of time to think, which is really nice. It's a good way to get out of my head and get out of some of the patterns of my head. And I had 2 or 3 really difficult conversations that I was putting off. I was like, maybe if I let this go long enough, I won't have to have this conversation. And I actually thought back to a couple of previous romantic relationships in my life and I was like, "Oh, remember those times you just hoped they would break up with you and you wouldn't have to think about it?" And I kind of connected as a pattern for me that like I just kind of avoid things until the status quo changes
Mm.
in those when it becomes difficult. If it's going to be hard or I feel like I might be the villain or I might come off poorly, I really connected that dot for myself. and it was not the most comfortable dot to connect. And I was like, how did I miss this in all of my planning? And when I kind of really looked at it, I was like, oh, because I haven't really pushed myself to be uncomfortable. I've really asked myself to be real cozy as often as possible.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And that level of self-awareness, like that is just that it's that mirror coming up at you of like, okay, you have an area to grow, but this whole concept of identifying the challenges that you want to face and being intentional about it. It's almost like the running into that burning building, right? Making the decision that I'm going to identify a place in my life where I am willingly going to
Yeah.
run into that burning building, knowing that I'm going to make it out. But in this space, I'm going to challenge myself. And I know you do a lot of mindset work too. And that is oftentimes the only way for us to break out of patterns within our subconscious mind, right? Because our subconscious mind wants to keep us safe. It wants to keep us protected. It wants to keep us doing the same thing that we've always done because there's a pattern for it. And so oftentimes the only way that you can get to that place or that you can get to the other side of the hump is to challenge that, right? There's positive
Yep.
affirmations, there's a place for that. But sometimes it's just
Absolutely.
kind of like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it scared. I'm going to do it confused. I'm going to do it afraid. I'm going to do it all these things and just see what the outcome is.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, as I mentioned, I'm still working on how to make this a framework and make this something I can work on reliably with my clients. But the first thing that comes to my mind, if this is a difficult exercise to ask yourself, is to try to externalize it, right? What's the villain you want to face this year? What's the bad guy? Who's the big boss? And take it outside of yourself a little bit, externalize it and make it a thing, and you might get a little bit better answers.
Yeah. I have a follow-up to that.
Sure.
Would you say though that oftentimes the villain is us?
Yes. Absolutely. But if you can externalize a little piece of yourself, sometimes it's a little bit like, so I work with a coach, and one of the things we worked on earlier this year was actually giving form to the different types of my like inner critic, right? Like actually giving them like personalities and personas and identifying which one of them was showing up for me in different places. And so in defining those, they became a little external. They became a little bit separate from myself. And I think if we can take those spaces of discomfort we want to overcome, like don't be like, the thing I want to overcome this year is my crappy boss. Like that's not really going to help you. But really look inside and be like, what's the big bad in this relationship I can be overcoming? What's my monster of the week this week or something? And it could just be, you know, detaching value from what your boss is saying, or it could be not taking criticism personally. Maybe that's the like big bad. But like really look at what are these things you can externalize the foe, but really leave the outcome within your own control.
Yeah, I love that. And the only reason I asked that or the question around the villain and being ourselves is because oftentimes we walk around thinking that we're good. Like we got it all together. Like
Oh
like
yeah, I'm perfect. It's fine.
yeah, it's like we can do no wrong. Like it's everyone else, or it's everything else, or it's the circumstance, and not
Mhm.
realize that even in that we're somehow, or we're in some cases abdicating our own power, right? Our
Yeah.
own internal power, our own internal authority to change the circumstance by simply putting that mirror up. I love the detaching it so that you can give it a name, you can give it an identity.
Hmm.
I've done the same exercise with clients where I'd be like, okay, well, what's her name?
Yep.
What's her name? Give her the ugliest name you can think of so that when I'm not going to say any names because I don't know who listens to the show.
Yeah.
I don't want to offend anyone, but give it the name that you just like, you detest that name so that when she shows
Hmm.
up and she's, telling you you're not good enough or making you question, you'll be like, all right, listen, I'm not listening to
Yeah.
you today, dot, 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 whatever the
Yep.
name. Positive Intelligence is a book. It's on my audio book or my Audible, excuse me. It's on my
Audible.
Audible. And that book talks about the saboteur, the inner saboteur, and
Hmm.
similarly gives each personality or each distinction
Hmm.
around the saboteurs. So for those of you who are listening who are kind of like, wait, I wanna do the same exercise, that's
Yeah.
another good book to rely on.
Oh, that's great. I love to ask myself, what is this saboteur? What is this voice trying to protect me from?
Mhm.
And once I know that, can feel a little bit better about putting them to the side and being like, I understand you're really trying to keep me from failing publicly a lot of times. I understand you're really afraid of this, and that makes it a little bit easier to put that fear to bed.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the deep work of getting to the root of why you have that
Yeah.
fear. But
That's for a therapist. I look forward.
yes. And so what I find very fascinating about the work that you do and your approach to things is you have a very like process driven, structured way of like working and operating, or you're able to take things and put them in these very structured, process oriented spaces. But yet in reality, like you're very creative and open and all those pieces. So where do you think you learned that skill of being able to take, chaos essentially and whittle it down so that it is in a structure and it becomes a repeatable process?
I'd like to think it's just an innate skill, but it's for me, that's really a coping mechanism for the chaos of the world. I grew up in a very chaotic house. I have four younger brothers. I did a lot of babysitting. And not just for my house, I actually specialize in babysitting families with lots of kids or younger kids. I babysat like bilingual French kids for like there were like four of them, and one of the babies kept having nightmares in French. I specialize in bringing some calm to chaos, and it's always been a personality trait of mine. I think part of that's just because I was the oldest kid, and my mom needed something that could bring the tenor down, and I got real good at doing it in little ways, and it just became my coping mechanism for when things are chaotic. Find the purpose, find your bigger why. What are you doing here, and what do you want out of this, and how can you bring something chaotic meaning? Part of it for me is just my creative process. My creative offering to the world is that structure, and is finding a structure that actually fits the space that I'm in. One size does not fit all when it comes to processes. There are some tenets, there are some ideas and tools you can draw on, and there's constantly people doing amazing work with new tools and new ways of organizing. I'm a little overwhelmed at the loveliness of it. I think you might be able to hear that. But that's my creative space. That's my painting. That's my music. I'm not good at either of those creative arts. I love writing and I love communication, but my voice really lends itself, frankly, to instruction. One of the things I got mildly famous for at HBO were my instructional emails when we had to do team projects. They were really funny and they were engaging, and things that could have been really boring, like migrating a website and trying to like copy edit whole passages and making sure it went through the right process, were fun and engaging. And that's really where my creativity comes out, is finding the process that fits the people. Because for me, it's really, if a system's not working, it's not your fault. It's the system's fault. It's time to change and adjust the system to who you are now.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for
I have a lot of feelings about it, obviously.
yes, I mean, it is your unique brilliance. It is your zone of genius. It emanates from you, right? Like it's just that thing. And we all have that. And I love the fact that you've identified what that was and you're leaning into it. And, in leaning into it, you're expanding, you're growing, you're helping others in, ways that they probably weren't thinking like, oh, like, oh, if I just look at it this way. I mean, even the arrival fallacy and everything else,
Yeah.
like your entire being is around, okay, how do I maybe not compartmentalize? I don't think that that's a word, but how do I give definition to this? And
Mhm.
then what do I do with that information? So I wish I thought like you.
Thank you so much. That's so lovely to hear.
Yes, thank you for sharing your gift with the world. So I want to transition real quick to our Blitz session here. I have a couple of questions for you. Are you game?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, awesome. So, as you think about leadership from the standpoint of your own personal leadership style or leadership philosophy, how do you define that today?
Right now, at the very least. No, for me right now, leadership, my style and philosophy is very oriented around the person or people I'm leading. I'm a pretty flexible human being, as you can see, but designing my leadership to bring out the best in the people that I'm working with. So sometimes that means being funnier, and sometimes that means swearing a lot, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it means being buttoned up, and it means being at my desk at 9 o'clock and setting a good example. It very much varies within the groups and the arenas I'm working within. But it really all comes down to understanding the people I'm trying to work with and bring out the best in them and help them live out the vision that they have in their own heads for themselves.
Yeah, I love that. So it's like essentially as you're authentically showing up as you, you're also identifying, well, what does that look like for the other person and meeting them
Yes.
where they are.
What skills do I have that connect with this person the most deeply?
Yeah. Yeah. And especially in this time, I mean, it not that it shouldn't have always been there, but certainly in these days, there is that expectation of employees or people that you work with, or even just coworkers or individuals that are within your network, that they are seen, they are heard, they are acknowledged, and that people that they interact with can meet them where they are. Love that. Um,
100%.
so as you think about networking, right? Because we met
Mhm.
through networking, and I think that
Absolutely.
it's such a key part of the strategy of growth, period. Whether you're in entrepreneurship or in corporate environment, what strategy have you applied in your day-to-day in your career, both at corporate and or in entrepreneurship, that you feel has really been helpful and beneficial in advancing you?
Excellent question. First, I just want to say your style of networking and your courageous outreach to people and just kind of putting yourself out there has been a real example for me. It's really been something I've internalized a lot and really, really learned from and appreciated. So I just wanted to put that out
Yeah.
there and suck up a little bit. But for me, the strategy that I find that works best, the one that I employ, probably unsurprisingly comes a lot back to authenticity. And it comes back to following my passions and interests without judgment and without self-judgment, especially. I met my husband playing, corporate league softball. I met a bunch of my friends through other various random, I met a group of friends through a volleyball team I tried. I met a group of friends through a running group. A lot of these are coming off as athletics, but that's what made that's what made New York City really, really open space for me. Was there a lot of athletics there. But even here, I, took a part-time job for no reason except to earn extra money for our wedding from earlier this year. And I met a whole bunch of people in town, in a new town that I live in, and just really following what works for me and being open in every community I step into.
Yeah, yeah. I would definitely assign, you can reject it. I would assign like courage or courageous to, your brand and your approach to how you live life and move in your career as well.
I appreciate that. I've recently started to realize I might be moving from my Hufflepuff era of my life into like the Gryffindor era without really noticing it. Not to bring Harry Potter in your space for people who are not in there.
I'm over here like,
But well, I've always counted myself as a very loyal, supportive person, and so that was always that's what's attached to the Hufflepuff house, and people kind of write them off. And I really have realized the last few years that like bravery and courage are really you know attributes I've embraced without really noticing it.
uh yeah. I've noticed. So as we think about, if you could go back in time and have a conversation with a younger version of Megan and give her some advice that you feel has just been pivotal or something that you've learned along the way that you just wish you could go back and share with her, what might that be?
I think the biggest one is that it's okay to say no and it's okay to stop. It's okay to change your mind. All three of those are all kind of part of the same jewel of, I've committed to this. I'm very, as I mentioned, loyal. I'm very committed. Once I say I'm going to do something, I will do it. But, I think if I had known earlier in my life that I could try something and then decide not to do it anymore and not be a bad person, I think that would have been a much more comfortable way to get through my 20s and maybe even my teenage years.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
Yeah. I resonate with that. Heavily, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, I could go into that for days here.
It's its own podcast episode.
It is. It is. It might be its own podcast altogether. So as you think about, what you're building, right? Obviously, you are allowing yourself or creating the space for you to share the essence of who you are in different environments and different capacities. But nonetheless, you're still building in every decision and every step that you take. So as you think about it from the perspective of legacy, right? And the legacy that you want to leave or the mark that you want to leave in this world, what does that look like for you?
I want to build new ways for people to work together and show up for each other. I don't know what those ways are going to look like yet, but that's really the kind of thesis that ties all of my work together. I want individual contributors to be able to show up their full selves. And I want companies and teams to be able to approach working with their employees like collaborators. And if I can build that in some teams instead of just this hierarchical, I'm the boss and I say what's what kind of approach to work, if I can build that in just a few teams, I feel like I will have left behind the legacy I was here to leave.
I love that. And now is certainly the time. I feel like
Yeah.
there's an opportunity exists now versus maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So no
I feel
doubt.
like I've been I feel like I've been banging this drum for quite a few years before the pandemic hit, and then I was like, see, I told you."
But also it's kind of like, okay, I feel like in 2020, I felt the tag of like God saying, all right, Sabine, it's your turn,
Here you
right?
go.
Step in. And it's almost like that's all it is. This is the opportunity for you to step into that.
It's time.
Yes, I love it. And then last question for you, as you think about, well, not last question, but part of this blitz,
Mhm,
but as you think about books that you have read or a book in
mhm.
particular that has been instrumental in helping you either professionally or personally, what is that book or books?
Uh, so started off my career in publishing, so I will not give you the whole bookshelf. There are 2 key ones that really come to mind for me, and the first one was The First 90 Days, which was a book I got right before I started at HBO, and I know people are really familiar with it, but really setting that approach of having goals right when you start a new job, when you start a new role, when you come into something and really hitting the ground running with some tangible deliverables. And obviously the 90-day approach really changed my mindset for a lot of things. And then the second one, and again, this is the English major in me, but Body of Work by Pamela Sweat is one of my go-tos, and I reread it every couple of years. And it's about finding the through line in your whole career, project by project. And it really changed my approach to my career. I was reading it right around the same time I was reading the first 90 days. I went through a real voracious, voracious moment in my career change life, but really it changed my mindset from this is my job and my title is my career to this is the project I'm working on now. And this is the title I inhabit during this project. And being able to separate the title from my identity and being able to put it in something that I was coming into really changed the way I approached my work, and I think is part of what let me let go of that ego a lot earlier than a lot of my colleagues.
I love those recommendations. So if I recall correctly, because I had a book, I'm thinking it's the same Pamela Slim. She had like the Escape the Cubicle or something like that, a cubicle
Mhm.
escape or okay.
Yep. Yeah, I actually have the book like right here.
It's a really, really thick book, y'all.
Escape the Cubicle, I feel like she had a lot of feelings to get off her chest. Body of Work feels a little bit more accessible. I also want to give a little shout out to Gretchen Rubin and the 4 tendencies. I don't think you really need to read the book, but the tendencies that she talks about, which are upholder, obliger, questioner, and rebel, is a little bit like the tagline I would give it is like the love languages for work. It's like really how you can communicate quickly to achieve outcomes together as a team. And I found that really, really helpful.
What's the name of the book again?
It's the 4
With four
tendencies.
ten-
I think the first book she wrote it in was better than before, but if you look up Gretchen Rubin Beyond the Happiness Project, almost everything is about the tendencies.
Okay, awesome. We will definitely include all of those book recommendations in the
I
show.
gave you too many.
Wow, there's no such look. There's no such thing. But yeah, as you can tell, there's no such
I
thing.
appreciate it.
So as the audience is listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to connect with her. I want to connect with her. I want to learn more. Where can they get in touch with you?
So right now, I would say the easiest place to connect with me is LinkedIn. I'm Meaghan Wagner, Meaghan. That's just all the extra letters for you. On LinkedIn, my parents are Irish. Sorry. And for kind of more fun content, I'm leaning into really capturing how my planning style leads to the fun parts of my life in my Instagram. So if you just want to see cute dog pictures and how I plan fun hikes and stuff and make them happen a reality, that's at _goal_guru on Instagram.
Her Instagram feed is very entertaining and inspiring all at once. You get to see the creativity, the fullness of her creativity there. So be sure to check out. And for website purposes, do you have
for my website is meaghanwagner.com. So it's again with the Meaghan, Meaghan, and you can get to it right off my LinkedIn. So that tends to be, I have to update it because it's fully dedicated to my coaching practice, and I need to make some updates for that.
Awesome. It's a never-ending project, the website.
Yep. Just constant updates.
So we'll be sure to include the website, all of her social handles, and certainly the books there. Meaghan, it's been such a pleasure having a conversation with you as always. You and I could go for hours. And so I appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise and really dropping these gems on how people can be a little bit more intentional about how they're leading in their lives and how they're leading in their careers and stepping into those burning buildings so that they can grow in the way that they have intended that they want to grow. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And so for the audience listening, I will be back next week with another amazing episode and amazing woman in leadership. Until then, have a wonderful rest of the week. Take care and talk to you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Leads Now. If you found today's episode helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your business or organization, I would love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sabine Gideon, that's my handle, and send me a private message. Or feel free to go ahead and leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network who you think might benefit from this content. Lastly, be sure to check the show notes and the description below for links to resources, including relevant downloads, articles, and any upcoming training. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of She Leads Now. If you found today's episode helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your business or organization, I would love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sabine Gideon, that's my handle, and send me a private message. Or feel free to go ahead and leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network who you think might benefit from this content. Lastly, be sure to check the show notes and the description below for links to resources, including relevant downloads, articles, and any upcoming training. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week.